Why don't you take a walk?
Anybody want to bet $500 the kid chokes?
Come on, what are you starting trouble for?
I'm not starting any trouble. Come on, any takers?
Eddie, I'm gonna leave.
Any takers?
This guy's a jerk.
You want to go for 1,000?
Paul Newman was one of the greatest movie stars of the last century. He starred in more than 60 films, including The Hustler, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and The Sting. Yet the Oscar winner's real passion in life wasn't acting. It was racing cars. And he didn't pick up the sport until he was 47, when he learned how to race for a movie.
A new documentary chronicles Newman's 35 years behind the wheel. It's called Winning: The Racing Life of Paul Newman. Take a look.
You see it with the Oscars. People vote. They say him or her. In this, it isn't. We vote and it's him and her. You either cross the finish line first and it's either him or her.
Technically, I mean, he was really a good driver.
He wanted to be looked at as a driver, not as an Academy Award winner, but as a man who was involved with his heart and soul in racing.
Racing became his passion, and he went for it.
Paul Newman is going to be BC Production 1979.
Nate Adams co-directed this movie with comedian Adam Carolla. Nate, good morning.
Good morning.
How did you and Adam get interested in this to begin with?
Well, I'd have to say this is definitely Adam's love child. Adam collects Paul Newman's race cars, and once he started collecting the cars, he started collecting the stories that go along with the cars, and then he realized the magnitude of Paul's racing career, and that it was a story that no one really knew.
We mentioned in that setup he started racing at 47 years old. How did he even get interested in it? What started it?
You know, in the documentary, Mario Andretti tells a story of taking a hot lap, which is when you go around a track with a race car driver in the passenger seat, which usually I've done it scares the life out of you. And in 1967, Mario Andretti took Paul Newman for a hot lap, and then after that, he was very interested in racing, and he turned down other films to do a movie called Winning, which meant that he was going to get to learn how to be a driver, and he went to school with Bob Bondurant and started racing.
This was the surprise to me. This was not something he just kind of did for fun on weekends. He was a serious race car driver who won a lot of races, finished second at Le Mans.
Yes, he won his class at Le Mans, and he took an overall second, which is, you know, Mario Andretti hasn't done that. I mean, it is very unbelievable to win Le Mans.
There's another thing that's really interesting about this documentary, and that's the relationship between him and Willie T. Ribbs, someone I had never even heard of. Anthony and I were talking. We'd never even heard this name, but he had such a profound impact on not only his career, but the sport of racing through Willie.
Yeah, Willie T. Ribbs is the first black driver to race in the Indianapolis 500. And he was coming up the ranks, getting a lot of animosity from the racing world. He literally couldn't get a professional job, even though he was one of the best drivers out there. And he couldn't get on a team. And Paul Newman basically called one of the sponsors that he was very close with and said, you have to hire this guy. Yeah. And they hired him, and he became one of the very best Trans Am racers that there ever was.
After all these interviews, after seeing all this footage, do you think that if he had become a race car driver, say at 20, we would only know him for that? He would have been one of the best? Based on, you know, the other drivers that I've talked with, they all said he was an amazing driver. He raced professionally for 7 years. He had 20 top 10 finishes, you know, against some of the best drivers in the world. If he had started at 20, he would have been a name that we would all know as a racer.
And he did it all the way into his 80s?
He won his last race when he was 82 years old.
I don't mind knowing him as a leading man, though. He's pretty good at that, too.
Yes. Yeah. You know, I would always show this to my wife as we were doing different cuts, and she would always be like, Paul Newman is so handsome.
His brother has the same eyes, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Nate Adams, thanks very much for being here.